This is America, the nation that prides itself in its democracy. But underneath the surface, there is a deep-rooted issue that is growing each and every day. People aren't keeping up with political current events, especially the youth. More and more Americans lack basic political knowledge that is necessary for informed citizen participation. As the internet has continued to expand, information is more readily available than ever. Unfortunately, many young people seem to prefer keeping up with the Kardashians to keeping up with the news. Several students have tried to take a closer look.
Hello everyone, my name is Vivian Zhao, and I'm here on my home campus at Plato Senior to find out how much our fellow students know about current events. Let's find out if we're politically challenged. Who is the Vice President of the United States?
The Vice President? Joe Biden?
Mike Pence. Mike Pence.
Mike Pence? Mike Pence.
Who is the Texas governor?
Rick Perry, Texas governor. Beto O'Rourke. Right. Mike Pence. Beats me.
Oh, no, Texas. No. No, he's a senator.
Greg Abbott.
Yeah. How many senators are there?
There's at least 5. Probably like 50 for 50 states, right? Yeah. 40. I don't know.
Alright.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I don't know, how am I supposed to know this?
What the heck?
100.
Who is the Speaker of the House? I know. Oh my god. It's Brian. No. I don't know.
Like the speakers you get from Radio Shack?
What? Who's the Speaker of the House?
What does that even mean?
Nancy Pelosi?
AOC are the initials of a popular Democrat from New York. What did the initials stand for?
AOC?
I don't know.
The Articles of Confederation.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah.
Saw on my Twitter.
AOC are the initials of a popular Democrat from New York.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah.
These surveys may be representative of the general population, and they may not be, but it's time for America to pay attention.
Can you name a branch of government? How about all 3 of them in the United States? Well, if you can, then you are in rare company, I guess, because according to a recent survey by the Annenberg Public Policy Center of the University of Pennsylvania, only 1 in 3 about Americans can name all 3. Another 1/3 can only name 1. 1 in 3 can't name a single branch of government. Not being able to name a branch of government. Now, I understand that for many people, you can certainly get through your day-to-day life. This information doesn't actually come up. But it doesn't mean that it's not affecting you. Knowing so little about politics that you can't even name the judicial branch, I mean, that has to tell me that you're not doing anything really to actually change politics, to get the political outcomes that you actually want or would benefit from. And if you are opting out of the system, then how can you be surprised if in the long run it doesn't provide you with the outcome that you would prefer?
If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and what never will be. These words were written by Thomas Jefferson. Ironically, it was James Madison and not him that was the father of the Constitution, but less than a third of American college graduates know this. 60% of college graduates don't know any of the steps necessary to ratify a constitutional amendment. 50% don't know how long the terms of representatives and senators are. 40% didn't know that Congress has the power to declare war. Such dismal trends continue after graduation. 43% of Americans don't know that the First Amendment gives them the right to freedom of speech, and a full third can't identify a single right it gives them. Such a lack of knowledge in our American constituents is what prevents our country from passing meaningful policies today.
If you don't know anything about what's happening in the news, you don't know what decisions are being made by people who have power in our society. And what that ultimately results in is a situation where you can be exploited or decisions that are adverse to you can be made, and you aren't in a position where you can provide in a place where you might be able to research or protest about an issue or vote a particular way in an election if you feel strongly about a decision that's been made. So kind of like all of that, the starting point of, I guess, just like being civically aware is paying attention to what's happening in the news.
Different demographics have different levels of political knowledge. Surprisingly, age is one of the most influential factors. Various surveys report that besides education level, an older age is the biggest predictor of being more knowledgeable on civic issues. There's no obvious reason why a baby boomer and a millennial with the same education level would have such a knowledge gap, but the numbers continue to show this.
I think debate students definitely keep up with the news, but they're probably not the norm, right, for high schoolers. I teach some non-debate classes, and in those I definitely get the sense that most people are just kind of aware of what they hear about, but very few students have like habits that involve consuming the news directly, right? I would just tell other people, find a way to learn about current events that matches with the types of media that you naturally consume. So like, for example, if you don't listen to any podcasts, but you like use Snapchat all the time, you can follow The Economist and BBC and New York Times and Washington Post and Snapchat. And then like, if you click through their stories, or I don't know if they're called stories, but like whatever they post, then you'll get that same kind of exposure to the news that someone who watches the cable news shows would have, or that someone who reads like a literal newspaper would have, right? So just figure out like how you like to consume information, and then the odds are that there'll be some kind of way for you to pay attention to current events using the like research methods that you already use naturally.
A government by the people, for the people, and of the people is only as wise, as just, and as free as the people themselves. Our nation is experiencing a crisis in civic education. A 2016 American Council of Trustees and Alumni report showed that even though nearly all 12th grade students took a course in civics, less than a quarter of them passed a basic examination at proficient or above. Oftentimes, it's not an unwillingness to keep up with the news, rather people just don't know how. Fortunately, there could be clubs at your schools that allow you to express your thoughts on important issues or to just keep up with current events.
It's because I was talking to my peers, right? And a lot of people our age, they are politically motivated, but they aren't aware of why. And like they don't understand their deeper context and issues besides what they see on like social media, on Twitter. And I wanted to start a club that went into more depth about these issues, that explored them, and like we actually do stuff like campaigning, knocking on doors, calling people. Because I feel like that's there's being aware of politics and being involved in politics. I think involvement comes after awareness.
How often do you meet and what do you do in those meetings?
We try to have like meetings every so often. We try to aim for once every 2 weeks or about once a month. And like every single meeting, we talk about issues that are already being talked about. Like we see them online. For example, like we saw the shootings, we saw the Senate election in Texas. So we talk about those issues, and at the meetings we go into more detail about them. Like we explain their candidates' positions, we explain the context behind why they're thinking that way, and that's how we push awareness. Because you can be aware of something and not really understand it, and if you don't really understand it, there's no point of knowing that information. That's why I think it's super important that people know exactly why people are doing things, because politics is more than just having an opinion. It's a social science. Politicians, they act in a certain way because of their certain beliefs, and they do it because they represent people who also believe the same things. So by understanding like the context is the reasons why, like economics, racial, religious preferences and biases, we gather and we become more in tune into what's going on around us. I think that's very important.
Clubs in schools are just one example of how students and youth can stay civically engaged. Even without access to these clubs in schools, students can still find reliable ways to stay politically aware.
I think for most students, they don't really have a reliable news source, because they get their news from like Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever's like popular and like trending, right? And I think it's a very superficial way of understanding the world. I encourage students to actually go and read out like print source media, like the New York Times, the Guardian, Washington Post, like journalists who go to college and study how to find news and like how to write articles, and read those to actually understand what's happening. Because I go on Twitter a lot, right? And you see on Twitter how people complain about, oh, why is no one talking about this issue? But the thing is, people are talking about the issue. You just aren't in that conversation because you're only getting information from one place, and that's Twitter, So I just want people to be more proactive about how they seek their information, and realize that there's gaps in their knowledge, and then they can always fill that gaps. Like there's people out there who will write articles about everything. You just have to go and read them.
Now, more than ever, it's important to pay attention to the news. We live in one of the most critical, rapidly changing periods in human history. If we continue to keep our eyes closed, we might open them one day to find that the world has changed, and we missed our chance to have a say in it. Our youth is our future.